We did this study actually to really highlight what the poor are experiencing, because you know, when you read about corruption and the effects of corruption, many people say that the poor bear the heaviest burden on it. But most studies show what the general population, or what you and I perceive corruption is. Very rarely do we hear the voice of the poor who actually experience it. And so this study was done by Malaysian Care in order to bring out some of the very real experiences that the poor have. And so the methodology that we used was semi-structured interviews and a mix of quantitative and qualitative analysis to see, in terms of statistics, how the poor experience it, and also in their perceptions of how corruption affects them. We had a sample of 97 people, and we focused on 3 of the communities that Malaysian Care works with directly. First is residents of low-cost flats and villages. We designate as UP, meaning urban poor. Then people with prison and or drug addiction background, PD, and then people with learning difficulties and their parents, LD. Next slide. So what is the definition for corruption? We use a few definitions. One, the World Bank says that it's the misuse of public office for private gain. Tier Fund states it as abuse of entrusted power for private gain at the expense of others or the society as a whole. And Transparency International's definition is abuse of entrusted power for private gain. So these are many of the official definitions of what corruption is. Now, what do the poor define corruption as? This is what they say: do it haram. Haram for Muslims, it's evil. Committing a crime against nature and innocent people, it's illegal, unlawful, criminal. Cheating, lying. Misuse of power or authority to exploit. Greed, greedy people. Self-gain, it means those who receive bribes. As Tam was saying, you know, there's the taker and the giver. Injustice, no compassion, no human rights. This is how the poor describe corruption as. So what were some of their reactions? It aroused feelings of anger and fury, being victimized, of being helpless, feelings of helplessness. But of course, the other side of the coin, then there was also these kind of reactions. It's normal. You know, Tam said, you know, corruption is so prevalent, it's become a culture, so it's normal. Happens everywhere. A reward for a favor. Instant gratification. You know, you want something, you give the bribe, then you get instant gratification. Some people would see it as a win-win situation. Yeah? So this is some of the reactions to corruption. Now, if you look at some of the statistics then, we see that corruption happens a lot for the people who are in prison or in drugs. 87% experience some form of corruption or bribery. Among the blue, you see the blue graph, among the people with learning difficulties, 45%, and among the urban poor, 24%. In the last 12 months, none of the prison or drugs people that background experienced corruption. I think that was mainly because they had entered Christian drug rehab centers, so there was no avenue for corruption. Or, you know, the person in charge of the home didn't accept any bribes. But for the people with learning difficulties and the urban poor, even in the recent times, in the last 12 months, they experienced corruption or bribery. Next slide. So what were the contexts in which they experienced it in the last 12 months? Refugees in urban poor, their flats were raided by the police or RELA, and they were detained and whipped and deported if they didn't give a bribe. In the urban poor communities, as part of their livelihood, selling metal scraps, they encountered the police, and if they didn't give any bribes, their businesses were disrupted. Same with having local food stalls. Local council officers came, and if not for the bribe, their business would have been disrupted. Again, application for food stalls, local council officers were involved. And then we go down further with the people with learning difficulties, speed traps, I think many of us have encountered those kind of things as well. Instant gratification, in order not to get a summons. Next slide. These are some experiences of bribes that have been given, not just over the past 12 months, but those that have been given some time back as well. They were caught with drugs, and in order to escape, they had to pay some bribes. Traffic offences experienced by all three groups, stopped or raided by police or railer, mainly refugees who experienced it. Having small businesses in order to sustain their livelihood, mostly among the urban poor who experience it. Those in prison, of course, to get lighter duties, gets cigarettes from the wardens, of course the prisoners and the addicts in the detention centers. Business-related corruption, urban poor, and application for housing or local welfare aid, mostly among the urban poor. And some problems, of course, you can see that most of these are all government authorities, JPJ, local council, prison, and police. Next slide. So what were the difference between the three groups? Now, among the prisoners, there was a lot more acquiescence of corruption and bribery. It was something that was very normal for them, something which they agreed to. So corruption is seen as a transaction or an exchange of favors. I need a cigarette to satisfy my craving at the moment, so I just pay a bribe, and then the warden will give me what I need. So it's a solution to a problem, or a solution to a want that they need to attain. In the urban poor, they are generally strongly condemn the act, but they see themselves as a victim, no choice. If I don't give the bribe, then I will be detained. Or if I don't give the bribe, then my stall will be closed down, then I cannot sustain my livelihood. So this is how many urban poor sees it. Of course, there are also cases where the urban poor were cheated because they didn't know what were the requirements. So there were people who came in and they said that, hey, I can help you get some welfare aid from the government, but you pay me 20 ringgit or 50 ringgit. So because of their ignorance, they just pay the money, and of course, then they don't get the aid. Then there's among the learning difficulties, those with special needs, they see the act as morally wrong, but generally accepted as a way of life. Well, yeah, it may be wrong, but no choice. I just do it in order to get the summons reduced or something like that. Okay, next slide. So what are the impact of corruption? Some of the themes that were highlighted at the national level, funds are diverted from development, foreign investors lose confidence, country goes bankrupt. Now these were all mentioned, these are themes which came up from the poor themselves. They have actually identified these areas. High inflation is the reason, one of the effects of corruption. Just now, Tan Sri Ramon mentioned about that. Poor quality of services due to corruption. Lawlessness, corruption allows violators to get away. Cultivating a bad culture of dishonesty, low morality.